All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the TowerDive TV weekly number 41. I am here today casting with Azaraki Dragon, and we are in the finals. Hi, Azaraki.
Hey,
That was that was some introduction there. That's all you got for me today, really, man? Hey.
yeah, I guess.
Oh.
Well, you just said hey, so you didn't ask how I was, so I was just thinking, well,
Okay, I'm sorry. How are you doing today, Azaraki?
I'm doing all right. Yeah, pretty good, I guess. It's not really much of a better answer, is it?
I know. I was about to say these are terrible answers. Oh man. You tried. That's all that matters.
All right, so unfortunately, I didn't actually get to see most of these games and how they played out, but I do see a Fiddlesticks ban, however, and I was there for the last game with the support Fiddlesticks that just kind of ulted over the walls and killed things with its 4 kills and so much AP. So that's a pretty targeted ban, I'd have to say right there, especially since Fiddlesticks isn't really the person who you would normally use for a ban unless you know that the enemy plays Fiddlesticks really, really well. And looks like Jarvan, Sona, and Vayne, those are a lot more standard, although we're not really seeing Sona as often as we used to. I think her role has sort of been replaced with Nami's, because Nami is better than Sona in very many different ways, really. She has an ultimate that serves as an initiation, a disengage, and Sona does the same thing, but Nami's is wider. It's also got a longer range on it, even though it's a slower moving projectile. But if you're sort of playing it to the range of Sona's ultimate, then it's only going to take a quarter of a second longer for the Nami ult to hit you. So at the same time, it's just sort of just outclasses the ultimate altogether. And the rest of the kit, she has a stun on the Nami bubble and also some pretty good sustain and poke herself.
Yeah, she's got some great CC built into her early game kit coming out with that Aqua Prison. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw her picked up in this game. She's become an increasingly popular support, but it actually looks like we may see the lock-in for Lulu here soon. We'll have to see what happens with that. But the real only similarity between Sona and Nami in terms of, their scaling overall and comparability in the early game really comes down to their health. They both fall into that point where they're both easily harassed out, they take a lot of damage, and that's why Fiddlesticks is an absolute no-go in this match. Going up against a Fiddlesticks with a squishier support is just not something anybody wants to do.
Especially when that squishier support is also Zyra, which is another one of those really squishy supports that you don't really think of when you think of supports that have a good amount of health. Now, one thing that plays to Zyra's kit is the fact that her spells are fairly long range. You can land Grasping Roots confidently without actually being in range of auto attacks or in range of the common spell range of most champions. So that's a pretty safe support pick if you play it safely. Now, you can also play it aggressively where you're a little bit closer to the action and you throw in some of your own auto attacks. That can get very risky, and as I said before, but looking over to what they're facing, we have Nami, who is a very, very poke heavy lane. So I think we're just going to see this Zyra play a little bit more in terms of the passive, stand back farther route, but still throw out Grasping Roots, throw out her Q quite a bit, and make sure she gets some harass down with the plants, and that will help them out in that lane, especially against Sona Trista, Soraka. No, Lulu's Tristan lane. God, wow.
Good job. I was like,
I
am
need
I on
some.
a delay? Did something happen that I didn't see? And no, you and me both, man. I don't think either of us were planning on doing this today.
All right, yeah, I didn't get my casting warm up where I just shout the same thing over and over and over again, but
What? Is that really what you do for a
no,
casting warm up? Okay.
it's
I
not.
was concerned there for a second. Like all I could imagine was like this annoying little dragon sitting in a room yelling to himself for 20 minutes warming up to cast MCS.
That would be an amazing warm-up, I have to say, but Anivia is going to round out the picks, and we don't see Anivia too often, but she's in a place where she's not overpowered and she's not underpowered to, the common standards, where most champs that are called overpowered aren't really overpowered, but she isn't known for being exceptionally strong, first pick every game like a champion like Zac is. Zac is always picked all the time or banned because he's such a strong champion. Anivia's not really in that place, but Anivia's also not in the place where where you see an Anivia pick and you said, oh, well, then it's sort of game right there. Anivia's not very good. She's right in the middle, and the big part of that is how well you can play the champion because she's very reliant on skill shots. And even though her E and her R aren't really hard to land, you really need to be able to land not only your Q, but you also need to be able to land your Crystallize. That's your wall, and that is really what starts turning some of these team fights around. So if she can, say, catch out two people in the jungle and make sure that the wall separates the two groups of the enemy team, then they can pick off those two in the front and easily finish off those three in the back later. So it's really going to boil down to how well she can actually play, how well she can use her frost or her flash frost and her crystallize.
An excellent point. All in all, though, we are in the delay now. Summoner blockers are down, so we can go ahead and take a look at what everybody has picked up in terms of summoner spells. Now, there are a couple of oddities here, namely Vladimir taking both Ghost and Flash, so really wanting both that initiation as well as that disengage potential that he can get from both of those. Which it's a little strange, little strange. And then, of course, Zyra picking up Ignite. Now, this isn't the strangest thing we've ever seen. When Season 3 came about, we started to see aggressive supports in kill lanes like Leona, like Zyra, pick up Ignite as opposed to Exhaust so they could go ahead and get those early kills and get snowballing early. Do you really feel like it was a good choice to pick up Ignite over Exhaust, especially when going up against a Tristana?
I don't really think it is in this case. You know, as I was saying before, Zyra is a really squishy support, and if she's getting in range to use the Ignite, then she's sort of overstepped her boundaries already, unless there's already, a fair good kill right there where you can be sure to secure it with Ignite. That's not really going to happen, and a lot of people who take Ignite on supports like to use it for a little bit of extra harass, and that's something that, it pulls down a little bit of damage and it discourages the enemy AD carry from CSing a little bit more and it zones them out pretty well. But looking at this, I think Exhaust would have been better if there are any hard engages. She would need that survivability from Exhaust over Ignite, where if they get initiated on, Ignite's not really going to help at all. Ignite's only really there for securing kills and harassing, so I would have rather seen a defensive summoner spell. And even at this point, heal would be an option, and we've been starting to see that a little bit more on supports as well, and that's mainly because AD carries have stopped taking Ignite, where Ignite hard counters heal because when you want to heal is when you're on low health and you're trying to bait the enemy for that little last burst of health. And when you want to ignite is when the enemy's low and you want them to tick down that last bit of damage with the ignite. So that sort of countered that. But now that ignite's off the table for most AD carries, heal is becoming a safer and safer option.
Right, and now we're looking at only 45 seconds left in the delay. Overall, your team comps will be down in the bottom lane. We're going to have Tristana and Lulu versus Graves and Zyra. In the mid lane, it's going to be Anivia facing off against most likely Zed. In the jungle, of course, we've got Zac versus Elise. In top lane, we're going to be looking at Shen versus Vladimir. Now, the junglers are an interesting choice. We've seen a huge resurgence of jungle Elise despite the nerfs that she got recently and those changes that came to her spiderlings.
Yes, we did see a very abrupt change in Jungle Elise's, and I'm not sure what exactly caused that, but she is always been a really strong champion, and uh, in this case, I've seen quite a bit of Jungle Elise's, and a couple have actually started Doran's Blade for a little bit of extra damage and health, which is sort of an odd pickup, but at the same time, she can benefit from that a little bit more than most other champions can in the jungle because she is built off of damage quite a bit. However, I don't think we will be seeing that this game. But Jungle Elise in general has some pretty amazing ganks if you can land your repel, if you can land the follow-up cocoon afterwards, then your laning partner can get a ton of damage down, and it's a very good gank mechanic. So we're gonna have to see whether or not she can pull off those big ganks, because if she can't, then Elise isn't really going to be as useful as she normally would.
In the meantime, though, we can get into these intimidation and border wars. We talk a lot about how it's not all about individual skill when it comes to players in the tournament, but how they work as a team. And the blue team is an excellent show of this right now. You can see all of those shiny borders coming out versus the borders coming out from the red team. and certainly are the underdogs in this match. So I'm interested to see how this is going to go. The team comp is interesting. They've got Zac for the initiation as well as Anivia. There's some AoE damage going on in here and a lot of crowd control coming out from the knockup from both Zac and Lulu as well as the Shen taunt in these fights. I'm curious to see how they'll be able to execute it overall.
Yeah, one thing that also brings to mind or comes to attention when you talk about borders is that these are also their
Mhm.
season two borders, and we're really, really far into season three. So these are absolutely not a fair estimate of what these guys can do in terms of their skill level. But we will be getting into the game soon. As soon as these guys finish up the loading and our spectator clients allow us to actually get into game. But in the meantime, let's run down some of the team comps and what some of the points of these teams are because we're seeing a lot of team fight on both teams. Zac initiation followed up by Lulu's wild growth onto Zac is a really huge initiation. You get two knockups right there, which is really, really huge. And then he uses Let's Bounce and, well, third knockup in a team fight. And that's really, really big, especially since those are AoE abilities. You can also follow up with Anivia's ultimate, which will put down a lot of damage in that big AoE. Sort of circle right there, as well as a follow-up taunt from Shen. So there's a lot of big AoE abilities over on that side. But over on the side of the red team, we also have a Vladimir, which is really, really big in terms of their AoE, and a Zyra on top of that. Now, after that, there really isn't too much damage in terms of heavy AoEs to follow.
Welcome to
But if we
Summoner's
say
Rift.
Graves, Elise, and Vladimir can put out the rest of their damage, then that's going to be huge. And, there's no real guarantee that Zed's going to be able to get the damage increase from Vladimir's ultimate because Zed's point is to sort of just dive into the back line, and their enemy AD carry might not be hit by that Hemoplague, so that's something to watch out for as well.
Looks like both teams right now just going for a defensive standpoint. We've got some warding out on
30
both
seconds
ends.
until
Each
minions
each team
spawn.
really covering the red, but we're gonna see a double invade going on here. Blue team going for the red team's red, and red team going for the blue team's red. That is a mouthful to say, and of course those wards going out. So both teams really kind of on track with the same standard start when they're going for the invade. But it looks like blue team might actually want to come around to go ahead and defend. This is really interesting kind of tiptoe back and forth right now.
Yeah,
Minions
and
have
this sort
spawned.
of heavy invade just to ward has been seen quite a bit in the Challenger series. Mobile Fire Challenger series, we've been seeing a lot of this, and it's really the fairly standard route when you're starting out the jungle, when you're in level ones before anything even happens. And this is basically what you do, and what this will allow is for the red team, they can know where the jungler is at almost all times, and it sort of replaces that big clairvoyance pressure that we saw early season 2, where clairvoyance obviously not taken anymore. The cooldown is way too long and it's just not useful enough as many of your other summoner spells, but this allows you to keep tabs on the enemy jungler either way, and it's a really effective way of doing so. And even there, we see a pink ward for the blue team right there, and that's just basically counter that play. But we also see the red team, they put a ward in the opposite bush, so they'll still be able to have that sight afterwards. So good play by the blue team, and also good play by the red team to sort of put that in the farther bush back there.
And Lulu might be running into some trouble down in this bot lane. She's got the vision on her on the part of Zyra right now. Is going to go ahead and get caught out, take a buckshot and an auto attack to the face, and that is the problem right now for I Am a Siren. But the nice part is that if she can go ahead and land an EQ combo onto Cheesy Cookie, Zyra is completely going to get bullied out of this lane. That being said, it doesn't actually look like Lulu is running mixed penetration, which is a very sad day for me, as that is like my favorite build to go on Lulu.
Even still, there's a lot of poke that can come down if the Glitter Lance
Oh,
lands, but
and
in the
in the
top lane,
top
gank.
lane, we've got a gank going on now. Chow Ping Pong getting caught out here. Shen gonna take quite a bit of damage, and it looks like, there we go, a perfectly lined up stun may lead to first blood here. We've got the flashes coming out, the repel going down, the flash, and there we go. Elise will manage to pick it up despite the ignite coming out on the part of Shen, burning all of his summoner spells, will still manage to get away. Zac and Anivia now coming up to go ahead and meet them, and the fail stun coming out from Elise will go ahead and seal her fate now. Art of Horse is now doing his best to get away. We're going to see the pool come out, the stun miss on Anivia, and he is going to retreat back to his tower.
Oh, unfortunately, Anivia, even though level 3, actually decided to take 2 points in Frostbite rather than take the Crystallized, which is her wall, which is very sort of an odd choice. It gives her a lot more damage in the early game laning phase, and we'll see that come to use right there as it chunks down Zed for quite a bit of health, but I would have rather seen the Crystallize taken third because it's just got such a great utility. If you would get ganked by it, it gives you a sort of reliable a way to escape unless they flash through it, and in that case you popped a flash. So it's still sort of a win. And on top of that, you can secure kills, and especially if you're planning to go around and gank a little bit in earlier in the game, you really, really want that wall.
Well, I understand why she didn't take it. You know, you're talking about jungle ganks and things like that. Elise has that repel. If she wants to, she has the ability to go over the wall. That being said, the same thing goes with Zed. With the way his shadows work, he'll be able to get past that without too much of an issue. So while I understand why she may not have taken it in that particular instance, you know, it still has its benefits. I still think it would have been better if she took it. I agree.
And it looks like in the bottom lane, we're still seeing quite a bit of poke out from either team, but the blue team is certainly winning in this respect. And I think Cheesy Cookie playing Zyra right now is just being a little bit too forward in her play. You know, she's taken quite a bit of free harass from Glitterlance quite a few times, and I think she should just sit back and wait for a moment when she can do that, but Wicked Shot's here to help out.
Yeah, it looks like we're going to have Elise come down. There we go. There's the polymorph down, but I am a Siren now going to get taken out as a nice root came out from Zyra. Will manage to secure that kill there. Graves picking that up for himself, and that is not going to be fun for Tristana.
Oh no, it's not, especially on a champion like Graves. Scales very well in the early game with some attack damage, and that's going to be able to make his buckshots just hurt that much more. And, you know, at this point, then Cheesy Cookie can start playing a little bit more aggressive, and once he lands a good grasping roots forward into the enemy, then there can be a quick draw buckshot combo, and that'll do a lot of damage, which overpowers the amount of poke that the blue team has if they manage to play it right. Now, of course, that is reliant on landing those grasping roots, so we have to see whether or not she can do that. But all this takes into account after Igu actually goes back, and he's not done that yet, so she still needs to be a little bit careful, and the explosive shot from Tristana is also serving as a very, very free sort of harass that she can get onto Zyra.
And well, Zach's here now to go ahead and have something to say about this. We've got the flash coming out from Zyra, but it may not be enough here. No, it is. It doesn't look like that small dot is going to be enough. She's down so low, but no, she's going to manage to get out of there with just barely any health. And this is the trade-off of not taking Ignite on 80 carries. You know, you occasionally get into situations like this where it's like, damn, if only I had that extra bit of damage that I wouldn't normally have. And unfortunately, this is just one of those times where Tristana really needed that Ignite to go ahead and pick up that kill. And especially early game on Tristana, you know, she has a good early game and she has an amazing late game. She falls off slightly in her mid game though, and that's the problem. So while she scales well the later the game goes on, you know, she really does need those kills early on.
Yeah, and taking Ignite on Tristana is actually something that would be possible to help secure those early kills. A lot of people won't expect it, and at the same time, she can get a little bit farther ahead for her early game. And if we go in terms of late game, then she's got a pretty good escape mechanic with the rocket jump. But on top of that, we can also see that she doesn't necessarily need the barrier or cleanse too much. And near the late game, she can easily get something like a Mercurial Scimitar, which will help with not only her damage, but also the survivability in the end. And that might be an option that we could consider on playing Tristana in the near future. But taking a look right now, looks like she is going for a pickaxe, so might be going for the early Infinity Edge first, which sort of odd on Tristana. I would like to see a little bit more in terms of just things that don't cost that much. Something like a Bloodthirster, maybe a Blade of the Ruined King, something that just isn't such a huge money sink, because that's just going to slow down her mid game even more.
What I'm hoping for right now is that she's just essentially gotten the pickaxe to kind of sit on it, because she needs that extra bit of AD, doesn't want Adorns right now, and finds it to be the best option, even though, you know, there are obviously better options. I'm hoping that that's what's going on instead of building that IE, because, yeah, like you said, it's going to put her behind for that mid game, and she's already going to be hurting for it, because Graves has got this kill, he's keeping up with her on CS, he's got this BF sword, so he's got a lot more AD than she does right now. I mean, it's just a rough situation all around.
It is pretty rough. Now in the mid lane, we see there goes the wall in action. Barricade getting caught out a little bit, but at the same time, Wicked Shot not really able to do anything. But if there's any time to go in, this is it. 10 seconds on Crystallize, but it still doesn't look like Wicked Shot wants to go in for it. Just going to counter jungle a little bit in the meantime. So Zed in the mid lane picked up a Vampiric Scepter. That's pretty standard on him. Normally you rush Blade of the Ruined King, and that's going to give you a lot of damage. And on top of that, your Death Mark scales with more damage if you land the Blade of the Ruined King active, because it just goes off of how much damage you can deal. So that's something that will also give him a lot more damage when he goes for the level 6 engagements. But Zac is still sitting in this bot lane waiting for a perfect initiation. Just doesn't look like he can find it yet.
Oh, and that will be the question here. It looks like the red team, they're just going to go ahead and back off. They haven't necessarily noticed this yet, but they do want to go ahead and take the opportunity to back now that the lane is shoved up onto that tier 1 tower, which is a great move. Meanwhile, in the top lane, it actually looks like Art of Horse right now, going ahead and hammering down this top tower, wanting to go ahead and take that out as quickly as possible. Down below half health now, actually, so Vladimir making short work of that.
And Vladimir is very nice at sustaining in the top lane. That's really the point of Vladimir at the moment. There goes the taunt. It's just going to be able to put a little bit more damage down onto Vladimir. And on top of that, we also see that Coded is coming in for a possible gank. Now, if Vladimir keeps pushing, then this is going to be a very effective gank. He can just go right and basically land his CC right over that wall from the blue team's try right there. But he's going for the lane, and it looks like the ward's spotting him out, but it might not matter with the taunt.
Yeah, we see the ultimate coming out from Vladimir. The Ignite is down, and now there we go. It looks like we've got the flash coming out from Zac, followed by his ultimate. Will be enough to go ahead and take out Vladimir. In the bot lane, however, we have the red team. They're going to go ahead and secure the first dragon of the game right here and further their gold lead. So despite the fact that we had that kill come out, it's just not enough right now. We've got about 1,000, one to nearly 1.5k gold lead going on right now. Some of it coming down a farm, but a lot of it coming down to that dragon.
And Wicked Shot going in for the kill on the bottom lane, popping a couple of flashes, but missing the stun, so they're not going to be able to do anything there. And basically taking that dragon is the standard reaction when you see the enemy jungler take the top lane. Either take the top lane tower or just pull off a gank right there, because obviously if he's top, he can't be bottom to try to stop that drag, so it's a very good reaction to do that. And even though Zac has 2 kills right now, like you said, the goal difference is still in favor of the red team, and that is on the dragon right now. Along with a little bit of farm, all around the board, there's just 1 or 2 CS advantage for the red team right now, so there's that's going to be giving them a little bit of gold in terms of that global gold. But yeah, the dragon is really what's making that big difference right now. If I want to see if there's anything that the blue team can do about it, I want to see them take a little bit more in terms of initiations and allow Shen to follow up with him. His ultimate allows him to get anywhere around the map. I was pausing to make sure that there's not going to be any action in the top lane, but mid lane.
We've got the barrier coming out. A nice Crystallize will go ahead and bring Anivia down to her egg form right now. We've got Elise coming in, Wicked Shot coming in here with all that damage. The Shen ultimate going down. What? Oh my god, are you kidding me right now?
Wow.
I got nothing. Zac coming in here, he's going to go ahead and use that slingshot, doing his best to latch onto him. It's not going to work. Zed's going to get away, and down in the bot lane, we've just got stuff going on all across the map. Tristana now in a pickle here as she's used her jump to come in, but this is going to be problematic as there we go, Cheesy Cookie coming in with that, the brutes, and we're going to see the flash come out. I don't have any words for what just happened with Anivia.
That was quite amazing right there. But going back to that bot lane engagement, like you said, the rocket jump aggressively, and one thing that Zyra does really, really well is she punishes aggression very hard. The more aggressive you are, the easier it is for Zyra to land the grasping roots, as well as land the Stranglethorns. And even though Stranglethorns wasn't up in that engagement, it is up now, so they're going to have to be even more careful now that that's up. And whenever you use a rocket jump aggressively, you need to be sure that you can secure a kill or an assist. Otherwise, you're not going to get the refresh, and at that point, you're down an escape, which is rocket jump is such an amazing escape that you really want it up as much as possible. And unfortunately, that just didn't allow for that. So Cheesy Cookie and Soj, I don't really know how to pronounce
Graves,
that. But,
that thing.
Graves, yes.
Yeah.
Graves. They will be pretty far ahead in this lane at the moment. Like we said, Graves with the BF sword as well as a Vampiric Scepter, he can sustain, he can do a lot of damage. And right now, if the red team wants to go in for an engagement, they have Stranglethorns, so it's going to be pretty good for them.
Yeah, but it doesn't look like they're going to be able to land the snare right now, so that's not quite going to happen yet. In the top lane, however, we're seeing Shen pelt out a lot of damage onto Vladimir. He is being forced to back, and he's rushing an Abyssal Scepter, it looks like.
Yeah, it does look like that, and that's sort of odd since he's against Shen right now, and Shen does, a combination of every kind of damage except for true damage, really. And I don't really think the Abyssal Scepter is really the best choice against him. I would have wanted to see...
Oh, not that it matters. In the bot lane, just absolutely obliterated Tristana being picking off Zyra there, rather, and now actually going to get picked off herself. The exhaust coming out, and Graves, I don't know if you noticed that, Graves actually just stopped right there.
I didn't notice that, but it is kind of weird. Auto attack cancel, unfortunate for him, but he did end up picking up the kill onto I'm a Siren, so that is something that he will be quite glad about. And, once again, looking across the map, not really too much in terms of deviations for the build. Hex Drinker on Shen, and that's just to sort of lane against the Vladimir, who's going in for the kill right now.
Yeah, we're going to see the Ignite go down onto Vladimir, though, and that is going to be problematic for him. He's going to take quite a bit of damage here, but luckily he's got that Hextech Revolver, so he's in a much better position than Shen is, despite his kit coming out for that little bit of lifesteal.
And looking towards Anivia, it's sort of, she has a Catalyst the Protector as well as Tear the Goddess, so Rod of Ages, because Catalyst only builds into Rod of Ages now, there's nothing really else she could be going for. And on top of that, a Tear the Goddess, but a Seeker's Arm Guard as well. Now, one thing about Anivia is that if you slow first and then land your Frostbite, she still has some really high base damages, so you don't really need to stack AP right from the beginning, and you don't really need to stack too much AP throughout the game either. It's always nice to have quite a bit, but Magic Penetration also works really well for her. Cheesy Cookie getting caught out a little bit by I Am a Siren. They're going to have a little support duel right there. And it looks like I Am a Siren's going to win out on that in terms of damage, as well as she can keep the ward in that brush down there as well.
I'm just excited because it's Lulu, and I love seeing an aggressive Lulu being played like this. And he's playing Lulu quite well in that respect, going in with that Glitter Lance, as well as that Help Picks combo, taking out a lot of damage right now. I'm actually curious, let's go ahead and see real quick. Leveling up Glitter Lance first, so definitely going for that very aggressive Lulu right now. Meanwhile, it looks like we've got the pings down. Wicked Shot has been caught out, the Repel going down. He's got nowhere to go, forced back down, and there's the wall coming out. Stranglethorns going down, but it looks like, no, unfortunately not able to reactivate the Q, but it looks like Zach will go ahead and get that kill. And now we're going to have the ultimate. The ultimate came out from Lulu, but now Shen coming in as well will go ahead and get onto Graves. Graves getting down very low. He will end up falling here. Chow Ping Pong picking up that kill. Meanwhile, it looks like Zed has managed to pick off Tristana, but the chase is on for him right now. It just doesn't look like they're aware of where he is, so they're just going to take Dragon instead.
And that's still a good choice. The efficiency is really the big deal right there, and that's really what you want to do. In terms of this game, Barricade trying to poke himself back in there, and so is Cheesy Cookie, but the blue team secures the Dragon, and that will... Oh, a wall!
Yeah, a nice stun coming out from Anivia, followed by that wall, and that will force the flash out of Zyra. Zed coming back in here for quite a bit of damage, will manage to go ahead and land the snare down onto Zach, and now he is forced to run away because it's Zed coming in with his shadows. Very scary right now. We got the ultimate coming out from Anivia, forcing Zed back, and it looks like everybody's going to manage to get out of here now.
Yeah, and going back to that big fight that basically resulted in the blue team's Dragon right there was just, like I said before, Anivia landed a great wall, and that just allowed everyone else to land their AoE abilities. Because, the red team, they were running away. They realized, oh, we're caught out in the enemy jungle. Oh, let's just get out. But Anivia said, no, you can't get out, walled off the exit, and at that point, they were able to put down all of the AoE abilities that they had, and it really just snowballed the fight from the rest of that. And taking a look at this, I really like what she's doing in terms of sort of not necessarily maxing Crystallize second, but basically you're maxing Frostbite, that's the big thing. And in the meantime, you get 1 or 2 points in Crystallize, and what that's going to do is that right now Crystallize is at the point where it's wide enough to shut down a jungle lane, but she's not maxing it, so she can still keep the damage on her E and on her Q. So that's really one thing I like to see on Anivia players.
That is an excellent thing, but it looks like the blue team, they're finally doing what they need to do to come back into this game. They're pushing in on that mid tower. Meanwhile, though, they've got the ultimate coming out from Zac, and it looks like Cheesy Cookie is going to go down here. We've got the explosive spider coming out, the stun coming out from Elise. It's not going to land, and now they're going to be forced to just go ahead and push this lane back out. You know, despite the fact that they had gotten Dragon and had gotten that kills, they're even still behind. A lot of this comes down to those towers going down and giving them that map control. It's always something to keep in mind that, you know, sometimes towers are more important than dragons simply because those towers don't respawn. They won't have the opportunity to give you gold again. And that's really something that the red team has taken advantage of here in this game.
Yeah, and they also get a lot of map control by taking the mid lane tower, and that's sort of the big map control tower that we think about. If you take the bottom tower, then okay, well, you get a little bit more pushing done in the bottom lane. You can maybe make a couple more plays for drag, just about, but that's about it. Unless you push all the way to the base, in that case, you know that the minions can push far enough so that you can be safe to take a Baron, and if they try to stop you, then they can go back to the bottom lane and try to stop that. But at the same time, the mid lane tower is really what opens so many situations where you could pull off jungle invades, you could attack the enemy buffs. You can basically go unnoticed through the mid lane, and it would really work well for the team, and that also brings a little bit more control towards both objectives, not being able to push out that mid lane towers, those mid lane towers.
Well, right now, let's go ahead and take a look at CS and item build. Down in the bot lane, Graves versus Tristana. Tristana down about 30 CS right now, so she's kind of hurting at the moment. She's not in the best of situations. You know, we talked about that mid-game falling off, but it looks like you're right. She actually is building for this early Infinity Edge, and it has certainly slowed her down quite a bit. Meanwhile, Graves has got a Bloodthirster. He's got his Zeal. He's sitting pretty on quite a bit of gold right now, and it's just he's doing very well for himself despite only being 1-1-1 tied in score with Tristana in this respect.
Yeah, that's really one of the big things of this match. So now that the Infinity Edge is complete, she's going to have a little bit more damage.
Oh, and Zed engaging down onto I Am a Siren, and it looks like Wicked Shot will manage to go ahead and pick that up. We saw the Stranglethorns go out. That engagement still going on. A flash over the wall will manage to save Graves, as we saw that Crystallize come out and manage to seal off that jungle. That, ladies and gentlemen, right there is the reason that those extra points were put into that, as Azaraki was explaining earlier.
And there's a Doom Bush, but it's not going to work.
No.
Zac knows.
Yeah, that nice warding coming out from the support, and it looks like Cheesy Cookie going to go down yet again. That passive coming out will not manage to land onto anybody, so no extra damage for you. Meanwhile, it looks like Graves getting a couple auto attacks down onto Zac for fun. I was gonna say shits and giggles, but then I realized that might have been inappropriate, so I said it anyways. Good job. Good job.
Alright, so now that Tristana has maxed the Infinity Edge, or sorry, now that she's gotten the Infinity Edge, she is maxing her Q second, which is really what you want to do in that sort of situation, because if you rush Infinity Edge, then you're having absolutely no attack speed on top of that. Now, Tristana's kit allows her for quite a bit of attack speed on rapid fire. Right now it's at 60%. That's a really huge steroid, and I'm glad to see that she's maxing it second. It's exactly what you want to do in this situation, where we look over to Graves, and he's actually maxing Smokescreen second, which is very, very odd. Normally, we do see Graves max the Quick Draw second. That gives him a lot more in terms of his attack speed steroid, and on top of that, it lowers the cooldown as well, which is two things that you really need, whereas there isn't really a huge benefit as to maxing your Smokescreen, except for you get a little bit more slow, but I don't think it's something that outclasses maxing Quick Draw in that situation.
An interesting point. One I'd certainly have to agree with, but in the top lane, it looks like we've got a bit of an engagement here. Art of Force getting engaged on Chow Ping Pong, going in there, the slow coming out, but it may not be enough. We may see, there we go, there's the Vorpal Blade, the Ignite coming out, and that should be just enough to finish off Vladimir. It is, and that is Art of Force going down. Meanwhile, it looks like Cheesy Cookie may go down here again. The third bounce coming out, managing to end her life, and once again that passive not managing to do much of anything at this point.
Yeah, Zyra's passive is really, really kind of niche. There's not really too many situations that you can use it just because it doesn't do enough damage. If you barely lose out on a duel and you can aim it correctly, then you can secure a kill, but other than that, there's really not much to it. Unless you're maybe the first one to die in a fight and you get that 260 true damage onto every member of the enemy team, then it's sort of useful, but at the same time, you're already dead, so I would probably rather be alive than put out a little bit more damage with my passive. But it looks like the blue team, they're going for a dragon off of that, and unfortunately, the entire time, Zed has been split pushing the bottom lane, so he took a tower. It's not really too good for the blue team, not able to steal it with collateral damage Graves is, and they're just going to be able to back off after that.
And meanwhile, in top lane, though, it looks like Shen is going to be pushing in on this tier 1 tower. They're going to be able to take it, and they really need it at this point because they need to reestablish some form of map control. Despite them doing so well in these fights, you know, oftentimes I feel like people forget that League of Legends is an objective-based game. It is not about the kills. Just because you have the most kills on the board does not mean that you're doing as good as you could be. It doesn't mean that you're top dog in the game right now, and we saw that really earlier on, and even see it now with how close the gold count is, despite the fact that the blue team is nearly double the red team's kills.
Yeah, and we see that the tower difference 2 to 4. That's really huge as well. Now the dragons are 1 to 1, so that's sort of been evened out in terms of the gold that has granted either team. So we're seeing very, very even, just 300 gold separating both of these teams. Now the big difference is that the red team has a better team for split pushing. We have champions like Vlad who can clear waves really quickly if he stacks Tides of Blood, and with his pool he can get away just as quickly. And on top of that, we also have Zed, who has a very nice escape mechanic, good wave clear, as well as quite a bit of attack damage, which he normally builds in his kit anyway. So they have some really nice pushing power and split pushing power on top of that. But not anymore, as it looks like there's a disconnect, nope, reconnect, so they're getting that split push power back. Now, where the blue team shines is that their team is much, much more about team fighting, and even though we see the Vladimir ult followed by the Stranglethorns from the red team, it just doesn't hold a candle to the amount of initiation there is on the blue team with a Zac slingshot followed up by a wild growth to knock them all up once again. Let's bounce, taunt from Shen, and all of that while they're taking damage from Anivia's ultimate. That is just so much team fight stacks. So that's really what both of these teams sort of need to do, is just play towards their comps.
Play towards their comps. That is an excellent.
I corrected myself.
I don't. Yeah, I'm sorry. Today is it just me, or is today a weird day for casting for you and me in general?
It is. It's a really weird day. My mind is sort of weird. I don't understand what's actually going on, and
I'm
sometimes
so
I say
going for a
things that I
nap
don't
after this
actually
game.
know where I'm going.
Yeah.
Like I'll say, "Oh, hey, look, uh, there's a Spirit of the Spectral Wraith on Vladimir. That's a good item. Never
Yeah,
mind. I don't have
that's a
anything to say
thing.
about it now."
Yeah, that's a thing, and it does stuff, and I'm going to sit here and twiddle my thumbs. Yeah, that's essentially what I feel like right now. Yeah, I know, right? But I'm pretty sure after this game, I'm like, I need a nap just running this tournament. I've only been up for a few hours, and I'm like, I want to go back to bed already. I hate you. But it looks like we are going to see the game unpause. Remember, hit J, jump to live, everybody gonna be all nice and synced up so there's no issues there, and get right back into this. It looks like Shen actually trying to catch out Art of Course right now. We have the ghost going down, but it's not going to be enough, and Vladimir is going to go ahead and be caught out here. He will be taken down very easily. Tristana picking up a much needed kill.
Tristana obviously has the grievous wounds on her E, so any healing that Vlad tried to do right there wasn't really anything that would allow him to turn around the fight and kill Tristana before he either gets away or then dies at that point. So that's really part of the big thing, where if Tristana is the champion to catch out Vladimir, that is pretty big, and she'll be able to shut him down quite easily. Barricade going for some really aggressive wards right there. Normally you don't see that spot in specific warded unless you plan to do some heavy fighting near the enemy team's base. But oh, nice catch out by Wicked.
Yeah, we're gonna have a team fight here. Stranglethorn's going down, at least doing her best to get out of here. Zac coming in with that ultimate. A nice follow-up from Lulu will go ahead and keep him alive, and now Zed focusing onto Tristana, but forced out of this fight, getting down very low, will end up falling. And now another auto attack from Graves will take out Tristana. Graves doing his best to get away, but Zyra is going to be taken out. Cheesy Cookie slain by Zyra. Meanwhile, Chow Ping Pong has taken out Elise in what ended up being a 3-for-1 exchange in the favor of the blue team. They've managed to come back into this game quite well.
Yeah, and sort of what happened there with the red team, they didn't really do what I said before, where their team comp is more oriented towards pushing. They just sort of started fighting up straight up fights, and the blue team will come out ahead in said fights because they just have such a good comp for it. And even though Wicked Shot was able to catch people out, Zac doesn't really care. He's so tanky. He just said, "All right, I'll elastic slingshot and let's bounce into your back line." And at that point, there's really not too much that the red team could do to avoid it. And it was also a little bit towards the fact that the red team didn't focus well enough. Most of them were trying to kill Zac the entire time, and once he finally died, once Coded went down, his passive was popped, so they didn't even get a kill off of that either. IGU Soj's on Graves actually ended up picking up the only kill of the fight, and that's because he went for the carries, he went for Tristana, and he was able to outduel her.
Now, here's an interesting topic. Tristana picked up the Phantom Dancer as opposed to the Static Shiv. Now, granted, there's a differential in stats and, of course, movement speed and everything else that it's got going on. But one of the biggest things that I want to point out about this is that Static Shiv, that increased crit chance, really lends to it simply because that first proc of Static Shiv can crit and do quite a bit of damage. That instantaneous bursts come out. So, what's the reasoning behind picking up Phantom Dancer as opposed to that?
I think the Phantom Dancer pick is mainly because she went Infinity Edge first, and even though the first proc can crit on Static Shiv, you get 10% more crit chance on the Phantom Dancer, which is really something that's going to help her do a little bit more damage in some of those engagements. And on top of that, Phantom Dancer also has more attack speed, so I think in this case, she's just going for the more hyper carry-ish sort of build, rather than the try to burst everyone down in the first shot. And I think that might play to their team comp really well as on top of that, because their team comp, even though it's really heavy AoE, it's not really about bursting down everyone in the first couple seconds of the fight. It's more about let's lock them down for as long as physically possible, and the entire time Tristan is just going to rain death. So I think it plays a little bit better towards their comp, and she's going more towards the hyper carry build rather than just the straight up burst build.
My biggest concern for the blue team right now is that outside of Anivia and Shen, they don't really have a lot of hard CC. Granted, they've got the polymorph coming out from I Am a Siren, but it's going to take quite a bit to go ahead and protect Tristana, especially against somebody like Zed, somebody who has that huge backline dive, that great potential for damage, and he really is building it. Aside from the Hex Drinker, that last Whisper and Blade of the Rune King is really scary to see on him. He's going to be coming in with quite a bit of percentage-based physical damage, and that is going to hurt.
Oh yeah, if Zac when he has his Blade of the Ruined King as well as Last Whisper, then that's one of the times where you want to start being worried, because he could dive into the back line and assassinate Tristana really, really easily. And as you said before, there isn't really too much that the blue team can do to protect Tristana in that respect. Zac is one of those champions who wants to initiate the fight. He wants to keep as many people CC'd as possible, and if he uses Let's Bounce to try to protect Tristana from one person, then it's not really going to be the best use of it. And the best I can see happening is basically Lulu on I Am a Siren. As you said, she has Polymorph, which helps prevent some of the damage from Zed, and she also has Wild Growth, which she can use on Tristana. But if they are forced to use that on Tristana, then they're not going to have it for the follow-up onto Elastic Slingshot for Zed. So that's something that is pretty strong in terms of Zac, but it's not really going to count if he's going to get caught out, but it looks like that's not going to be the case. And the red team, look, they're actually going back to split pushing, so we're going to see the game start to fall back into their favor a little bit. They're going to be able to take some of these towers very quickly, and that is exactly what I like to see.
This was working out in their favor before when they were doing that split pushing, so maybe going back to that will help them regain that advantage. It's something that we'll have to see here, but it doesn't look like Zed can actually, or rather Shen can actually go toe-to-toe with Zed. He's getting down very low, that Ignite ticking on him, and a very, very close call with that clone there.
And it looks like he's going to continue pushing out that top lane. The blue team, however, looking as though they want an engagement. That's what they're going to have to force in order to stop this sort of split push that Zed's got in the top lane. Now, Shen does have home guard, so he's going to be back up there surprisingly quickly. Barricade, however, is already out of the fight.
And Art, of course, getting caught out here, and now the engagement is on. Zac coming in. He's going to go right in there with the bouncy time. The Crystallize coming out, and now Vladimir trying to get into the thick of things. He's coming in, diving straight in with his ultimate, but will end up being taken down. Meanwhile, Zac will take out Zyra, being reduced to his passive. I Am a Siren is going to go down here. That explosive Spiderling coming out. Meanwhile, turn around with that stun, and it looks like Graves may end up falling here as well. No, he's actually going to get away. at least doing her best to use her spider, slippery skills, thingy-majiggers to go ahead and just walk right out through lane and possibly end up pushing and grabbing a tower.
Yeah, and really, unfortunately, the blue team, they were able to land that
Oh no!
initiation.
Graves getting caught out here is gonna take quite a bit of damage, and that's gonna be it. I seriously thought Tristana was gonna kill him.
It was very possible if they landed some sort of slow. Now, Tristan does have a slow on a rocket jump, but unfortunately that was just barely out of range. So he wasn't able to land that necessarily. And taking a look at Tristana, she has a Negatron cloak, so we might actually see the Mercurial Scimitar on Tristana, which would be, it wasn't necessarily something where I said she's going to build Mercurial Scimitar, but I said I can see that happening if you decide to forego that defensive summoner spell for an Ignite, but that might just happen anyway. At the very least, it's going to be a Quicksilver Sash, which will help keep her alive and will act as a cleanse for her. So I do like that pickup on Tristana, but one thing I think that she could use and make use of really well is a Last Whisper, which she might actually end up going for that build right after she finishes the Quicksilver Sash, but no, going for the Blade of the Ruined King actually with that build Water Cutlass.
Wow. So I can hear
Are you distracted
barking.
by the dogs?
No,
Yeah.
I can hear barking in your end, and then I can hear the barking across the hall, and I just want to sit here and bash my face into the desk. Oh my goodness. Sorry, just something about the little yappy dogs that live around here. But getting back into this game, I can see a Blade of the Ruined King wanting to go and essentially compensate for the fact that the red team, they're not building a lot of armor outside of the Warden's Mail and the Zanya's Hourglass. They don't really have a lot that screams, we need that armor penetration. Instead, she's going for that percentage-based physical damage based on the fact that they are building a lot of health. You've got a lot of Spirit Stones coming out. You've got, of course, you've got the Warden's Mail, the Giant's Bell, the Spirit Visage. Everybody's got a lot of things building towards health, and as long as you're above 1500 health, that is going to work out beautifully for you. Meanwhile, though, in the top lane, it looks like everybody's kind of getting caught out right now. These split pushing attempts by the red team really being stalled.
Yeah, they are stalled pretty well, and Anivia is a good champion at stalling those split push attempts because really, if you if you get a wave to the tower, Anivia can just sort of press R, then Q, and then the minion wave is basically gone after that, so that's something that they need to watch out for. However, the red team, they're still split pushing really well, and they're trying to distract Anivia. They're trying to get her attention as many places as possible, and now we see that, they're not actually drawing Anivia's attention to the mid lane, and now she's going back, but at this point, it's a little bit too late. Zed is already killing Shen in the top lane.
Yeah, that Hex Drinker is going to be popped there as he gets down low enough, putting Tristana in for the fight, saying, hey, I need somebody to come in and cover for me. And oh, trust me, you do, because right now, this split push, it's going to work out one way or the other, but it looks like Zyra may actually end up going down here. The Zanya's popped on the part of Anivia as Zyra falls, a Shen ultimate coming out, and now the chase is on. We're going to have that home guard Shen ulti come out and manage to take out Graves for the unofficial double kill.
Yeah, I sort of like that little troll right there that Anivia pulled where she got that one last auto attack off and she knew it was risky but had a Zonia's for the Stranglethorns. So that was a really fun play right there by her. And Tristana might be chasing a little bit too far. She needs to watch out for the turnaround that Zed could potentially do even without his ultimate. Still has quite a bit of damage. There goes.
There's a jump into the brush followed by the barrier is going to be more than enough to go ahead and take out that Zed. And now we're going to see this push up into the base. That inhibitor tower is probably going to go down. I can see Chow Ping Pong just saying, you know what, I can go ahead and tank this. I'm not too worried about the damage, and that's going to be it.
Yeah, the blue team, they're grouping together really well, and that's really going to help them out here. Ping Pong tanking quite a bit.
Yeah, we've got Vladimir coming in with the ultimate, and I am a Siren trying to back out of here, going only back in to use that, and it looks like she may end up falling here. Are we going to see the damage? No, we're not. Art of Force ended up going down now, and this is going to open up the inhibitor here. Despite the fact that Graves is here, it may not be enough to defend, but it looks like he's going to scare off 4 individuals.
It's weird. I think those 4 could easily lock down Graves, especially when we have Polymorph from Lulu on top of the stuns and taunts and all of that. On top of the damage from Tristana, they could have at least popped the the Guardian Angel right there, but perhaps they're scared a little bit of Zyra, who was also there to follow up. Meanwhile, in the bot lane, Zac actually took the tower as well, and I think Zac, in this case, even though he got a tower and it was sort of worth it in that respect, I think it would have been better if he was actually with the rest of his team and engaging in that mid lane because they would have won the fight a lot more convincingly. They would have had more health, and they wouldn't have had to back off of the inhibitors. So that's something that would possibly have worked a little bit better for them. But it looks like they are grouping up as four right now, and Lulu is on her way back into the lane.
Oh, and Zac has also been caught out here. He's going to be forced to flash over. Meanwhile, it looks like the blue team, they're just going to go ahead and secure their blue buff. Anivia picking that up. And now, ladies and gentlemen, you know it, you love it. It's your favorite dance of all, the potential Baron dance. And we're going to be denied because it looks like Zed is just going to go ahead and clean up top lane.
Yeah, the Baron dance. Hopefully, it doesn't last as long as. And I don't know if anyone actually remembers this,
Did,
but
did
CLGEU
Lulu just
versus
walk
World
outside?
Elite in in the Season 2 World Championships, that
Oh,
game was like a
God.
70-minute game, and we had a 30-minute Baron dance.
Please
People
no.
started cheering ward kills. That was
Yeah,
a very
please
long
no.
game. And
I want to go take a nap after this. Can we not do that this time? Like, I'm just gonna send a message to the team right now
another
and be like, hey, so maybe no.
Another interesting point of information, and I know that as League of Legends players, we're all supposed to hate on Dota. We've been taught to hate Dota with a passion, but recently I've actually been watching the International, and they had a 95-minute game
Oh dear
in the
God.
International for Dota, so it actually broke the record for longest competitive game of Dota ever. And at that point, the casters were just saying, "All right, at this point, they better go for the record and not end it now."
Nice. We got Tristana jumping in. The Stranglethorn's going down. Knockup will manage to stun her briefly. Zed coming in. Blade of the Ruin King is down. And there's the ultimate now. The Ignite followed up. And there's the tick damage. Last bit of Ignite will be enough to take him down. And that is going to signal a huge push down in that bot lane. Blue team having to recall to go ahead and try and combat that. Anivia will not get caught out by that auto attack though. So yay!
Yeah, and the entire time I really like the play that Zed did right there. And most of the time we see people who decide to split push against Shen, they try to push a bit casually and they say, well, if he ults away from the fight, then I can just take this tower. But what Zed did here that I really liked is he put immense amounts of pressure onto Shen in that top lane right there. And what he was basically able to do was just kill Shen outright. You can't ultimate if you're dead. So not only did he prevent the follow-up that Shen could have pulled with the rest of the blue team to try to initiate against the red team, he also secured that top tower as well. So I really like that play by Barricade, and that's the sort of plays that they really need to do to just try to force the rest of the blue team back. And that's what they need to do in order to win the game, is just keep this heavy split push pressure on and make sure that they don't get initiated on by the blue team.
Yeah, the only problem with that is that it's exceptionally boring to cast because there's never any real action going on. That's my only concern right now. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so dead today, if you can't tell, but pink ward going down in the mid lane. We are going to see Graves forced to back off
Oh,
with
they're
that
fighting
smoke
Baron.
screen, and yeah, now we're going to see the Baron attempt, but it doesn't look like they're going to change focus, and there we go. Now everybody's on to Graves. The ultimate down from Lulu onto Anivia. That is going to be one giant golden egg right now as Lulu gets taken down, and just not enough people here to respond. Zyra picking off Anivia now. Tristana in here to try and go for the cleanup. She's going to get very low. The failed flash coming out. She will not end up making it out of there, and Shen is going to fall shortly after. Zac going down after being burned is passive, and that may end up being GG.
It's possible. They're going to be able to take this top lane inhibitor and maybe both Nexus turrets. I think they might be able to end it right there, but in the meantime, while we find out, I would like to go back to that fight a little bit, and even though the blue team has superior team fight, one thing that happened there that allowed the red team to win was, first of all, it was a 3v5 at the very beginning of the fight, and the blue team, they weren't close enough to follow up. Second, one thing that I really liked there was that Coded went in with an elastic slingshot, and as soon as they saw the blue team, they were trying to shut them down from going for Baron, they all used all of their mobility abilities to get closer to the fight, and they said, all right, Zac, you can try to initiate on us, but by the time you land, none of us are actually going to be standing in that spot anyway, and they just won the rest of the fight without Zac being in there, and by the time the Zac got back into the fight, it was just too late, and he couldn't help snowball the rest of the fight for his team.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, what a way to close out the tournament. You know, we came into this and started talking about how objectives were more important than kills, and constantly, after about that 15-minute mark, saw the blue team dominating on kills, but they just weren't able to get a handle on objectives like the red team had. And we could see just poor positioning in that last fight ended up being their downfall. But that is going to conclude the finals of this Tower Dive TV weekly number 41. This has been Lunette the Herald. Casting with me here today is Azaraki Dragon. Be sure to check us out next week for our usual Saturday tournaments as well. You can find content going up every single day of the week here at twitch.tv/TowerDiveTV. So be sure to follow. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, as well as Twitter, all under the same name /TowerDiveTV. And where can we find you at, Azaraki?
You can find me at Azaraki Dragon on Twitter, and that's really the only big thing that I use that you can actually follow me at, so just do that.
Yeah, and you
I
can.
don't know,
I'm
were you
just
expecting more, maybe?
No,
I don't know.
I'm just here.
Okay. I have
People
Subway.
know I'm here. Well, yeah, I can hear you rustling around with your sandwich in the background. So while Azaraki eats a sandwich, I'm gonna get out of here. This is us signing off from Tower Dive TV. See you guys next week.
I got my ticket for the long way round. 2 bottle whiskey for the way. And I sure would like some sweet company. I'm leaving tomorrow, what you say? When I'm gone, when I'm gone, when I'm gone, when I'm gone. You're gonna miss me when I'm gone. You're gonna miss me when you're gonna miss me by my hair. You're gonna miss me everywhere. Oh, you're gonna miss me when I'm gone. I've got my ticket for the long way round, the one with the prettiest of views.
It's got mountains, it's got rivers, it's got sights that make you shiver. But it sure would be pretty